the marketing people, if they're in a silo, they're going to come up with all these great ideas, and half of them are stupid, right? They sound good in a boardroom, but it just doesn't work. So we always reverse engineered it and put operating people in marketing, along with some marketing, talented people, and we were able to do that.
You have found Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggle stories and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. Downloadable audio episodes can be found on the podcast link found at drawincustomers.com. We are locally underwritten by the Bank of Sun Prairie, as well as Calls on Call, Extraordinary Answering Service, and the Bold Business Book. And today we're welcoming / preparing to learn from Glenn Plumby, operations and marketing expert, former executive vice president and COO of Speedway convenience store chain, and author of a great book called A Charmed Life. So Glenn, how is it going today?
Wonderful. Been looking forward to this, and it's been a great day.
Yeah, I love having people like you on the show, the people that have been there, done that kind of thing, instead of just the ones that talk about it. They've actually experienced it, lived it. Maybe you're still living it. Just you actually have the experience to back up the information and advice that you give.
Yes.
So let's start from the beginning. How does somebody end up in the convenience store business?
Actually, it's really easy to get in the convenience store business. I mean, the barriers of entry are very low. And if you look, there's 150,000 convenience stores in the country. Wow. And roughly 70% of them are single site operators. So pretty easy to get into business, right?
All right.
Kind of crazy, isn't it?
So when you hold on a second now, 70% of those are just one guy owns that one thing?
Yep. Single site.
I would have never guessed that. Okay.
Yeah. That's because you're around up in your neck of the woods, Quick Trip and Speedway. These are big chains, multiple locations. And that's actually that's not the norm. That's actually different.
Interesting. It's funny you say that. I have a sister-in-law in Omaha. And I was taking my motorcycle from Madison, Wisconsin to Omaha, Nebraska. And I'm flying through Iowa, which,
Quick Trip.
There's not. I saw Casey's General Stores.
Yep.
Casey's, and it made me miss Quick Trip so bad.
Yeah.
Because the Casey's are kind of beat up, dingy, and sparse. Yes. I remember staring at that fuel gauge going, I hope I can make it. As you're in the middle, it's corn and windmills.
Yep.
That's all it is. So it's interesting how we just get used to, we have gas stations every 10 feet here, but that's not necessarily the case all over the country.
Dude, it's all based on population. Where you have population, you have gas stations.
Yeah, I would have never guessed the 70% were just one person owned them. That is interesting. Okay. All right. So you were going into more information about the convenience store world before I interrupted you and bold surprise here.
So I graduated from college, went to Miami University in Ohio, started with a company called Marathon Petroleum, and the subsidiary, the retail arm of Marathon Petroleum is Speedway. So spent 41 years with the combined between Marathon and Speedway. The last 30 were at Speedway, and absolutely loved the business.
All right.
Did about every chair there, and was very, very excited.
So do you start just as the checker out guy?
Typically, if you look in our business, I didn't start there, but we get a lot of people in college that start with us, taking money, and work their way up to an assistant manager, to a manager. And the money's pretty good for those people, especially for people without a college degree.
All right.
But all the management level people above the store were all college degree people. And I've hired a ton of people. As a matter of fact, that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book is I've hired hundreds of college graduates, and roughly 30% of them are going to fail. It's not because they don't have the academic knowledge. It's just because they can't bring it to the real world, and they struggle. So the book is really meant to help what I call people that are transitioning from high school to college or college to the workforce, to be able to make them better understand how to use those academic talents in a real world environment. So that's really kind of why I wrote the book.
That's cool. You know, what's interesting. You remind me of me. I was working with my kid this past weekend. We're running some wiring in the attic. He's 10 years old, and I'm trying to get him to understand just how stuff works
Yep.
around the house, under the hood, just stuff, right? Stuff that you're going to experience in life.
Yep.
Assuming that he's going to have a car someday. I don't know. Maybe they'll be flying by then. But at any rate, I wanted him to know like this is wiring, electricity goes through it. This is how we work it. He was getting so
Yep.
frustrated because he just wants to play baseball or soccer or basketball, some sports, just play with his buddies.
Yep.
I'm like, look, man, you got to know how to do this stuff, not because you're necessarily going to become an electrician, which if you want to, great, or
Yep.
because you get become a mechanic. You don't have to, but if you want to, great. It's
Yep.
so that when you have the stuff in the real world, you can actually talk from experience and knowledge instead of just trusting whoever it is that you're hiring or to even know what the problem is.
Yep.
A lot of people just
Exactly right.
don't even know how to change a tire. They
Isn't
can
that
afford a
crazy?
super fancy car, but they don't even know how to open the trunk.
Yep.
It's just a bizarre.
I,
Like, I can't have my kid be a moron.
yep.
I've hired people that had parents that did not have that belief. I imagine you have too.
Absolutely. All the time. Yep.
You
You know,
don't
it's
mean to. They
funny.
don't tell you that in the interview, right?
Well, no, that's true. But you and I grew up in an age where you played all sports. You had homework every night, and if somebody gets you upset, you handled it face to face. Today, these kids, they play one sport year round. They never have homework, and they hide behind their phone. And we have a 17-year-old son. And in my book, I quote by saying, generally speaking, teenage boys are pretty stupid, but if you get a group of them together, they're stupider.
Oh yeah.
And boy, that's so true. But I liked it better when you and I grew up versus what my son's going through today because it's not easy. It's hard.
No, challenging time. Very
It is.
challenging.
It really is.
So when you were hiring these people, what were the I imagine you learned just as you're cutting your teeth on all this, you're learning some things to ask or things to look for. What were some of the tricks or things that you would ask to try to figure out is this a person that's a good fit or is this person that's probably better off working somewhere else?
When I was on campus interviewing, I never really got into the academic side because honestly, if they're sitting in front of me, they have the academic background. So that was really never important. Um, what I was looking at is just for their ability to look me in the eye, have a general conversation, and be knowledgeable about a lot more things that's going on around campus. Uh, you get those kids that um, really want to be 100% academic. That's great, but on the other hand, those people really have a difficult time transitioning into the real life situation. I was a good example. I graduated from Miami. I had 3.0. I was in a fraternity. Most of my buddies had 3.5s, 3.6s. When it came time to find a job, I had 6 job offers, and they couldn't get one. And
Oh,
it's really just because you got to have the ability to you got to have some swag. You got to have the ability to carry on a conversation, and you got to be able to look people in the eye and let them know how confident you are. So that's really what I look for is just confidence.
interesting.
Because I knew if that person sitting across from me had some swagger and some confidence, they could be successful in our business. Because the convenience store business at the street level is not easy. It's it's
All
a
right.
very it's a very difficult job. You think about it. You graduate from college, we put you in training for 6 months. We give you the keys to 10 multi-million-dollar locations and say, run. And that's daunting. That is very overwhelming. So you got to have that. Matter of fact, we swagger was one of our terms that we used. You got to have that swag to be able to walk in and let people know, hey, I'm the boss, and this is what we're going to
That is cool. I love
do. Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Love it. So would
yeah.
there be something that you would ask or like, I don't know, ask them how to change a tire or some question that would be outside of the scope of what they studied academically to try to figure out
Uh,
if they had that swagger?
it was more or less just general conversation, what they did outside of school. That's what I wanted to know. And did they volunteer charities? Did they get outside uh, just the classroom? Did they were they in a fraternity or a sorority? Did you hold an office in those things in those organizations? And I was looking for that next piece of something that I could build on when we would bring them in house so that way we could teach them the business. You can't teach the ability to have a conversation. You either have it or you don't, you know? And like I said, 30% of the people we hired just couldn't do it. Now they may have moved on into other parts of the organization and become an accountant or an HR person or something like that. But from a pure operational standpoint or a marketing standpoint, you had to be out there. You had to have the ability to look somebody in the eye and talk.
All right. I know exactly where you come from. I have a call answering service, and teaching people how to talk or be able to communicate with people.
Yep.
I can't teach personality, man. I've tried.
Nope. No, you can't. No question.
Higher personality, you can train the rest.
That's exactly right.
Tell me a story as far as marketing a convenience store. That seems like a challenge to me because you're marketing to people that may not necessarily see you again because they're on a road trip, or you're just where you are and the people around you are your customers because they need gas and you're there. How does that work from a realistic, we got to market this business to grow it? How do you do that?
You know, the convenience store business has some main things that you have to offer: cigarettes, beer, soft drinks. And the business is trying to get into the food business, hot food, warm food. And that's really where we were moving when I retired back in 2021. Tough business because, number one, you get a lot of people buy gas, and the big objective was to get them from buying gas inside the store, because only 30% of the people that would buy gas would go inside the store. And furthermore, the demographics of getting people in the store, women and youngsters, very hard to do. Guys like you and I, we're comfortable in a convenience store. We go in there, we buy things, not a big deal. You know, women, you know, it has to be well lit, has to be clean, has to be inviting, or else they're not even going to walk in the door. And then you got the youngsters, the young kids, you know, they're really not interested to go inside either. As a matter of fact, we have a loyalty program called Speedy Rewards. You may have heard about it.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the most successful loyalty program in the convenience store chain. Probably, it may not be today, but in its day, it was probably the best one. We went to a university and we were trying to get youngsters into the store. So we go to the university and we commission this study. They bring their top 20 kids in, and they spend a month and a half studying the topic. We go there to have this big presentation. They give us this big presentation. And the first question I asked was, of the 20, how many of you went in a convenience store before you did this study? And how many kids put up their hand? None.
None?
Zero. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, why didn't we ask this question when we started, right?
Saved a few bucks.
So, you know, the results were somewhat tainted, but, you know, it was still a good exercise. But, you know, women and the new generations, getting them in, not easy.
So just to clarify, when you say youngsters, you're talking 20-ish and less, right?
Yeah. I'm talking drive, you know, when you're driving a car through your early 20s.
So they have a car, they got to fill it with gas, but they wouldn't run inside to get a soda or a snack or something like that?
The dominance of the evidence shows they buy their gas and then they go next door to a McDonald's or so to get their drink.
Really?
Which, when you look at that convenience store customer, time starved, you know, they're all time starved. And that was probably how we leveraged the business is, hey, we're fast, we're inexpensive, we can get you in and out. But we still was fighting these younger kids buying their gas, going across the street, getting in line to get a cheeseburger and a Coke, and spending 20 minutes doing it versus just walking in the door. So we were getting really good at it. We were getting really good at it in the late teens, early 20s, but it was quite a daunting task.
Interesting. That even would never have crossed my mind, because I do a lot of road tripping, and there's been more than a couple meals that have been from a gas station. And it's interesting that you say that now. I guess that didn't even dawn on me, but I was a kid. The food at a gas station was, you're just asking for gut rot.
Right.
And now it's convenient. I wouldn't consider it worse than fast food. Where
No.
before you're like, I don't know how long the hot dog's been sitting there. So
Well, and in your backyard with all the quick trips, they're one of the best food providers in the business.
you
I know
know,
that family really well,
yeah,
and they do an outstanding job, no question.
it is interesting that you say that because I agree with you completely. I was there. We have quick trips all around us. I was there. I was grabbing something, or I was with my kid, and we're looking for something. He was helping me at the office, so I figured I'd get him lunch at the gas station. Right? You did a good job, kid. Uh, and we're looking at something. They had some empty spots, and this woman from Quick Trip comes up, and she's like, "What do you want?" She asked that to my kid, and he's like, I was looking for your quarter-pound cheeseburger or something like that. She's like, "Give me 2 minutes,"
Yep.
and I was like, "What?" And then I
Yeah.
realized she's the cook.
Yeah.
It's a gas station with a cook.
Absolutely.
And I
Absolutely.
blew my mind. I just figured it was some lady that slapped stuff in the microwave. No,
Dude.
no, they have a kitchen, and she's cooking it for him. And I was like, "Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
this is a whole different
Crazy.
game than when I was a kid. Whole
It
different
is.
game."
But the getting those younger kids to understand that and try it. That's what we tried. That's what our big deal was, trial. We wanted to gain trial,
All
get
right.
people at least try one. And, we went over a fair percentage of those, but it was still a rough show.
Interesting. Yeah, Quick Trip's been I would say from customer service aspect, what they offer. I don't want to say every time, but close every time I go in there and you just observe from a business standpoint to figure out what are they doing differently that other businesses are not.
Yep.
It's so interesting to watch. I'll give
Yep.
you a really quick example, which is one that you probably know the story a million times over. We used to live close to this BP gas station. I'm sure it had a name, but I just saw the BP sign on it. And it was probably owned by just some guy or some woman, who
Yep.
knows. One
Yep.
place, right off an exit of a 6-lane highway, which is an eighth of a mile off of a 6-lane interstate. So great spot for a gas station. They
Yep.
have probably 14 pumps. So we're there. We lived there for a decade. That place is there, and it's always kind of dingy. It had a subway. The subway closed up years ago. It's just kind of, it was never one that you would go to. You'd never make it a priority or anything like that. If you needed gas in
Right.
desperation, it was right there.
Yep.
Quick Trip opens up maybe an eighth mile down the road, so further away from the exits, further away from the interstate. They probably have 40 pumps. That place will be packed, and
Yep.
that BP is crickets.
Yep.
Crickets. And
Yep.
I'm just thinking, if I was that BP person, I would have been thinking like all we had to do was be nice.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what did
Yeah.
we not do? Because
Yep.
location wise, the BP one is way better, way more
Yep.
convenient, closer right off the exit.
Yep.
But that Quick Trip is destroying them,
Yep.
destroying
No,
them.
they
So it's,
they do a fantastic job. No
yeah.
question.
So kudos to them because they raised the bar in a place or in a vertical that I
Yes.
feel that bar was pretty low.
Yeah.
I
They
still
really
remember
have.
going to the gas stations with my parents where you had to get the hubcap with the key to go to the bathroom outside.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. No, there's still some of that out there too. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
asking my dad, "Why do we need a key?" And how he would
Yeah.
just tiptoe around answering that question.
Yep. No question.
So that's interesting. So tell me, how do you move up from marketing into executive vice president and then chief operating officer?
You know, first of all, I have an accounting degree.
Okay.
Okay. So Miami University, I have an accounting degree, and never really liked accounting, but I knew I had to know the numbers, and that's really why I kind of got into it. So of my 41 years, I was only in accounting 4 years,
Okay.
and what I would suggest, the way to do that is, and it's important for young kids to know this. When you're looking at a company, you need to look at a company that was willing to put you in other disciplines. You can start a company, you can be in accounting for 41 years, or you can go to an organization whose track record is, let's have him in accounting, then we're going to put him in HR, then we're going to put him over here, then we're going to put him in operations. So what I always told young kids is trust the company you work for, sit in as many chairs as you can so you build your internal resume. And what I look for were kids that had multiple discipline experience, because I knew that they could be really good in operations. Same thing in marketing. I would say a very high percent of the people that we put in marketing came from operations because they come from the street. They really know what the customer wants. They know what, the marketing people, if they're in a silo, they're going to come up with all these great ideas, and half of them are stupid, right? They sound good in a boardroom, but it just doesn't work. So we always reverse engineered it and put operating people in marketing along with some marketing, talented people. And we were able to do that. So, I had a mentor. I was at Marathon Patrolling the first 11 years, and I had a mentor that I worked for at the time. He happened to be the CEO. He's the toughest guy I ever worked for. And he saw something in me, and he sent me down to the retail organization. So he sent me from Marathon to Speedway, and which didn't happen all that often. And I'll never forget, the president of Speedway also was a direct report of the CEO that I worked for. He wasn't happy about me coming down there. And I'll never forget, I went down there and I see him in the hallway. He comes up, shakes my hand, and he says, "Mr. Plumby, welcome to Speedway, but you weren't my choice." And he walked away.
Ouch.
That's how my career started at Speedway. So
welcome.
Yeah, welcome. So it worked out eventually. We respected each other's work. But, I had trust that the people that I worked for who put me in these different situations really helped me build my internal resume. So, I started from accounting, went into marketing. I ran marketing for 10 years. Then they put me in operations. I ran operations for 10 years. And then the last 5 years of my career, they combined operations and marketing together. And that was my role. But, it was really, really happened. And, I say it in my book, there's two things that I really live by. One, you treat people how you want to be treated. And, I live by that. And that's really important to me. And the second thing is you surround yourself with good people. And what I mean by that is I was never the smartest tool in the chest, but I had the ability to find people that were in my organization that could really make a difference. And you let them run. You can't micromanage, you let them run. So I live by really those two lessons that I actually learned from my mom and dad. And that really was a big piece of my success.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Tell me, from an operation standpoint, with convenience store, I mean, we talked about the food and stuff like that. I imagine over the course of decades, even the fuel that was offered is changing.
Yes.
So operations, you're having to deal with, I mean, software is changing, the fuel is changing. They're adding food instead of just being this a cooler, a bunch of cigarettes and some gas. Now
Right.
you're offering all these other things.
Right.
Tell me, what have been some of the challenges that you had to deal with over the course of time as a COO?
Number one, labor.
Labor. Okay.
Finding bodies, and then cost per hour. So if you look at, when in my organization, our turnover was roughly 100%
Annually.
in the store.
Okay.
Because those jobs are beginning jobs, and a lot of college students, a lot of high schoolers, a lot of things like that. So we had to be a hiring machine. We had to be an HR machine to be able to really make the business work. And, what we committed to was the people side of the business in the stores. As a matter of fact, our objective was to have 0 holes in the store on a daily basis. And what I mean by that is 100% of our part-time and full-time position filled. And
Wow.
to have 0 holes on a daily basis was an insurmountable task that we were able to achieve. And that's why Speedway was the dominant force that they were when we sold out to 7-Eleven, because we had people in the stores taking care of customers, cleaning the coffee pots, stocking the stores. So labor was number one as far as the ability to service the customer. You have to have people in there to talk to and to take money. Because if you think about it, a single guy wakes up in the morning, goes in to get his coffee. That person that we have across the register is the first person they talk to that day.
Oh, that's true.
That customer, so we always try to train our people, let them know that, if that's a terrible experience, that guy could go on to have a terrible day. So we try to get our people to understand you got to be pleasant, you got to have a smile on your face, you got to talk to people. And we got a lot of repeat business because of that. So it sounds a little bit different, but that's kind of how it is.
No, that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a little bit deeper there as far as the labor goes to get it 100%. Does that mean to deal with the call outs and stuff like that you ended up having a staff 125% or something of that nature?
We had we came up with a concept called recruiting centers. So, we had 4,500 stores, all company operated, 50,000 employees when we sold to 7-Eleven.
Wow.
And throughout the 40 states that we were operated in, we had HR hubs. So if there was a call out, the first option was to see if somebody who may be part-time wanted more hours. And if that didn't work, the manager would simply call the recruiting center and they'd have a person there. So I would say we weren't at 125%, but every, what we call district, a district is 10 stores. Every district had their pot of people that they could go to, whether it be part-timers that may need more hours or new hires that were waiting for an assignment. So, and they did a fabulous job really kind of making that happen.
That is clever. That is very clever.
But, when you're talking about that many employees, a 50-cent cost increase in labor is a big number. So it's a really a fine, it's a thin edge there between, you got to be able to manage the economics as well as you got to be able to manage having that pot of people.
No,
And
I completely
our people
understand.
Did a great job of that. They did a wonderful job.
Yeah, it was interesting during the pandemic. It was tough to find people.
Yeah.
So I did a little motorcycle trip up north into the UP of Michigan. And you start out around Madison, Wisconsin, you go to a convenience store and you see their hourly wage. You're like, no hiring, their hourly wage on the door. The further north you go into the kind of less populated areas, the lower that hourly rate was.
Yep.
You start out at 17, 18 around us, and then you go up and then it's 10, 11.
Right.
I didn't see it anything lower than 10, but it was interesting just to see, even though it was the same company, just based on location, or the hourly rate was different.
And I tell you, think about it during the pandemic, offices were closing, all those people were working from home, right? Well, the people in the stores still had to go in. They still had to service customers, masks, plastic things over the registers, cleanliness. And I give those people in the stores all the credit in the world, because while the office staff is sitting at home working in their safety of their home, we still had people in the stores taking care of customers. And, that was probably one of my biggest pet peeves I had during the pandemic was, we gave the notion that the store level people weren't quite as important as the people who worked in the office. And I combated that, honestly, I was in the car throughout the whole pandemic going to visit stores. Knock on wood, I didn't get sick. But, you got to lead by example. And in all those cases, we praise those people, no doubt.
Yeah, it's the frontline people that run the country. I always think of the janitor in The Breakfast Club, the movie where he's like, I am the eyes and ears of this institution.
Right. Yep.
So what inspired you to write a book? I mean, you got to retire, you can just sit on a beach and enjoy the rest of your life all chilling and relaxing. But instead you decided to write a book. Well,
after 40 years eating all the C-store food, I put 40 pounds on, right?
Not a
every
diet.
time you go in the store, you got to eat, because they ask, you got to lead by example. So anyhow,
quality control, right?
Yep. So I put 40 pounds on by the time I retired. And for Christmas, my daughter got me a thing called Storyworth. I don't know if you ever heard of that. But
Story, what is it? I'm sorry.
It's called Storyworth,
I have not
and
heard of that.
it's a service that you get a question a week, and it's meant to put your thoughts down on paper. I'm 65. I retire. My daughters, who I'm really close to, are worried, about me retiring and all this kind of stuff. So they bought this service. So every week I get this question, and it's questions like, "Tell me about your parents." What was your favorite time growing up as a childhood? Well, one year, one of the questions was, "What goals do you have in retirement?" And honestly, I hate that word goals now that I look back, because that doesn't go with retirement. Those two shouldn't even be in the same sentence. So, long story short, I walk 8 miles a day. And um, and as I'm doing this project for my daughters, I'm thinking about all these thoughts. So I just decided to dictate into my phone um, some of these lessons, because that's what they wanted. They wanted to know more about me long term. When I'm not around, they can remember. So I dictate, the book into my phone, import into Grammarly, send it off to my daughters. They edit it, and lo and behold, it was pretty good. So I sent it out to some CPG companies. I wanted their input and got some really good reviews, but from them. So I decided to publish it. Writing a book was never a goal of mine. I don't even read a lot of books, but as I really look at it, the ability to help these young kids transition either from high school to college, college to work, and even workers into retirement is not an easy thing to do. And I thought this could help with that. So
But
it's been a lot of fun.
nice. Tell me,
Yeah.
what is a CPG company?
Like Coke, Pepsi, Altria, potato chip companies, cigarette companies, they call them CPG companies.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you submitted what you wrote to some of the people that you knew in those industries?
Yeah, because I said, "Hey, what do you think of this? Could this help you?" Because they're hiring people too, and I got a lot of positive comments back on it. And I thought, what the heck? I might as well take a shot at it
Yeah,
and see if it works.
that's cool. So are
Yeah.
you still doing the Storyworth thing?
No, it's 52 questions, one question a week, and I did that for all of 2023. So I have the book somewhere. They bound it together and they make it pretty and all that kind of stuff. Um, and it's more of a remembrance for my daughters of my thoughts growing up and really throughout my life.
All right.
So yeah, I strongly encourage it, because it was a fun thing to do.
That
And
sounds
then to
cool.
read it, yeah, and then to read it, over the course of when the year's over is pretty fun too.
You know,
Yeah,
it's interesting you say that, 'cause I wrote a book and I feel like it's a pretty good book because every once in a while, and I say that it's a pretty good book, not to be the guy trying to hustle books, whatever, but
yep,
this guy that I do like to read. I love to read. Nonfiction. I can't wrap my head around fiction to save my life. But anyways,
yep,
I have a bunch of books, and sometimes if I'm waiting for someone, I'll end up picking up my book sometimes instead of other books. And it's interesting because you start reading a story and you're like, oh yeah, that did happen.
yeah,
But I can, because a lot of it's just anecdotes and stuff like that. So I get the idea of what you're saying, where you write this stuff down, you journal, something
right,
of that nature, where you can get these stories written
right,
for your friends, your relatives, your daughters, all that kind of stuff, but also for you to remember
right,
all the stuff that you've survived, learn
yep.
from. That's a huge deal.
Well, and it was also a way to say thanks, right?
Oh,
I
fair.
mean, to my parents who aren't here, but they taught me most of that. My wife, the pastor at my church, the several mentors that I had, in the organization growing up. It was my way to say thank you, and I do that in the book too. I try to make sure that they're given the due credit that they should.
Nice. So when
Hmm.
you let's dig into the book thing a little bit. It's kind of fun. And I know that there's a lot of people that are would be or want to be authors that would want to know this. So
Yep,
you got all the stuff written. You get
yep,
you get the blessing from people that are like, yes, Glenn, this is good stuff. You ought to publish this.
Yep.
How do you go down the road of publishing that book? Did you find a publisher? Did you self-publish?
Nope. I found a publisher. It was really, really easy. I mean, very, very easy. It's not cheap, but it's not overly expensive either. But I found a publisher. I live in Dayton, who was in Cincinnati, and a few of my friends used her in the past. And basically, we started in January, and the one thing I made her promise me is it was going to be done before golf season started. So I'm a really avid golfer,
All
and the
right.
last thing I want to do is sit in the house on a sunny day and look at edits and all that kind of stuff. And we got it done. So we published. It went live on Amazon May 16th. Had a great, first run. It was a bestseller in a couple categories. Um,
Nice.
and she did. I handed her the book, the rough draft. She had an editor, went through, did all the edits. Then we sat down and said, okay, how are we going to market this? What are we going to do? And it's gone relatively well. Probably the most fun part about it is I sent it out to a bunch of schools that I went to because I see it as kind of a complement to the capstone class for seniors. And I actually had a call this morning, and I got a call this afternoon after our podcast from a couple of universities I sent it out to because it's relevant. It makes sense to them.
Wow.
And really, what I want those college seniors that are getting ready to go into the workforce and try to help them with that transition. So that part's fun. I really enjoy that, and I've had a lot of positive feedback from the universities, and got a couple things scheduled. So that's going to be exciting.
That's incredible. That's super cool.
It is.
Tell me, you had on listing here, we have 10 simple but powerful lessons to enhance your life.
Yes.
What are those?
Those are the chapters. You know,
Okay.
and in the book, there's 10 chapters, and under each chapter there's a subtitle. So for instance, first chapter is wipe the slate clean.
Okay.
Okay. And what I dad taught me, when you work for a company, with the moment you get paid, you don't owe the company anything and they don't owe you anything. Think about it. Entitlement, right? How many people do you know that are working at a company and they want to complain to you? They're getting paid every week, but they're going to complain to you because I didn't get this promotion and I didn't get this and they treat me like crap. Well, I went through life with the fact that, hey, you wiped the slate clean. They don't owe me anything and I don't owe them anything. And in the subtitle of that is there's really no scorecard in business or a marriage. Think about it, because I relate every chapter from a business standpoint and then a personal standpoint. So that's kind of the first chapter. Treat people how you want to be treated. My subtitle there is you rent a title and you don't own it. How many people live through their title? And at the end of your time, when that title goes away, people are going to treat you how you treated them with that big title. And I know a lot of people that when they gave up that title, looked around the room and they just really didn't have many friends. So
Oh,
I preach, you rent a title. It can be taken away anytime. You don't own it. Surround yourself with good people. That's the third chapter. Trust is something you're given. It's something that it's not. Trust is something that's not given to you. You have to earn it,
mm-hmm.
and it doesn't happen overnight.
No.
That's something that, and there's a great story in there about that. When I first went into operations, I had 6 direct reports, and I came out of marketing, and there was a lot of distrust between operations and marketing. So they saw me as the enemy. It took me a
Oh,
year.
nice.
Yeah, so it took me a year and a half to get those 6 people to really see me as their mentor. So that trust took me a year and a half to really put together. And like I said, it doesn't happen overnight. A chapter on change. You have to take people for who they are. You know, my favorite story there is the night before I was getting married, or the day I was getting married. I asked my mother to come in and tie my bow tie, and she said to me, it's not too late. This is the day I'm getting married. She liked my first wife, but she didn't think she thought I wanted her to change. And I'll never forget her looking at me saying, "The woman you're going to marry today is a woman you're going to have to live with. You are not going to change her." We ultimately were married 20 years, had two wonderful daughters, and are friends today. But probably the best advice I've never taken. Priorities. You got to have your priorities right. Can't do everything. Not enough time in a day, and you got to make sure you take care of your spouse, because that's the one thing on the list of priorities that could go to the bottom if you're not careful. So I talk about priorities, expectations. Everybody has expectations. You got to be able to manage expectations. You got to be able to set expectations. You got to learn rejection, things like that. So you really have to be able to understand what expectations can do to your life. Be where your feet are. This is my favorite chat. You ever hear that term?
No.
So, be where your feet are. How many times have you been somewhere working and your mind is at home because you're missing something because you're not at home? Or
Constant struggle.
how many
Constant
times
struggle.
have you been somewhere and you're just not where your feet are? Your mind is somewhere else. So,
I was at my son's baseball game yesterday.
uh-huh.
He had already hit, so he came and went, right? He's a good baseball player. So all of his other teammates are up, and a lot of them are not. It's just league, so it
Yep.
was a boring game.
Yep.
And I picked up my phone and started looking at. I didn't even have anything specific to look at. I was
Right.
just going out of my mind watching this poor kid try to pitch.
Yep.
He's not my kid.
Yep.
But I had to set my phone down because I thought my son's gonna look up at me right
Yes.
from the dugout and say, "What is Dad doing?" And he's gonna
Yep.
look at me looking at my phone, and what is that
Yep.
gonna tell him?
Yep.
That he's
That's
not
exactly
important.
right. Exactly right.
So I was
And
like,
it,
God, put the phone down, watch these kids struggle through a baseball game.
yep. And I struggled my whole career because I traveled all the time, went to a lot of cool places with vendors, and I never really appreciated that comment until later in life. Uh, and really, what made me appreciate it, you golfer?
No, I mean I have
No.
golfed. I'm terrible at golf, so I usually just avoid the pain, not golfing.
Well, I was invited to play a golf course in Georgia called Augusta National, the Masters.
Okay,
Probably the most sought after invitation you can get.
nice.
And yeah, I promised my wife when I got there I wouldn't think about work, I wouldn't think about home. I was going to take it all in. Well, the night before we play, my supervisor calls me and says, "Hey, we want you to go on a temporary assignment for 3 months." And I had 24 hours to give him an answer. Right.
Whoa,
And I'll never forget. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I'm going to play the most awesome golf course tomorrow, and I got to think about this decision. And that was the point where I was able to put it out of my head, forget about it, and be where my feet were. And it was the most wonderful time that I ever had, because never once while I was playing that golf course did I think about the issue that was at hand. And from that time forward, I was always where my feet were. So,
nice. That's huge.
yeah. Another chapter is you can't take it with you, talking about money and charity, things like that. And then probably the chapter that I've heard the most feedback from, be like your dog. Be like your dog. So we have two Labradoodles. Now that I'm in retirement, I spend a lot of time with them. And man, they have it right. Dogs have it right. And I wrote a chapter with some nuances and funny stories about that. And then the last one is really looking. You got to be able to look in the mirror and like who that person is you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
If you aren't, you got to do something about it
True.
or complain. Most of the people won't complain. So those are the 10 lessons in a nutshell. And like I said, I approach it from both a business standpoint as well as a personal standpoint.
That's cool.
Yeah,
That's cool.
it was fun.
I
Really
love
was.
it. I want to dig into one of those if you don't mind,
Yep.
because this is a challenge that I have. Just the business that we're in, trust is a big deal.
Yep.
Myself getting new employees to trust me.
Yep.
getting employees to trust each other. So
Yep.
tell me about, how did you build trust with your other operations crew when you come from marketing to the COO position? So you're
Yeah.
essentially their boss,
I
but they're
am.
still apprehensive of you, right?
Right.
So what
Right.
did you, I mean, you were smart enough to realize like, hey, these guys don't trust me. We're going to take some steps to build this.
Yep.
What do you do?
You know, I started at the street level. So I had roughly 400 of these district managers. They had 10 stores each. I got their birthdays. So I would call each one of those on their birthday. So can
Oh,
you imagine being an entry level manager getting a call from the COO on your birthday? And
nice. Okay.
it gave me a chance to get to know these people, for them to get to know me. And the groundswell up, people loved that. People look forward to it. People talked about it. The groundswell was enormous up the ladder. So while that was going on, essentially for that year and a half, I was on the road straight. Every week I'd be with one of those 6 managers. And over the course of the year, I taught them marketing. So to them in operations, marketing was the devil. And I taught them marketing. I taught them why we did things. I taught them how we did things. And I, since marketing also reported to me, I was able to build an organization where those operations vice presidents had input on marketing. So now all of a sudden they're happy because they understand it and they're talking about it. And then really, the final thing that I did was I had their backs. So, in our business, in a C-store business, you have to have capital to grow. You have to keep building stores. You have to be renovating stores. And I believe in accountability. I believe in numbers, metrics, and accountability. And I would give the money to the divisions that showed me the best returns. And the ones that didn't give money, I sat down with and said, okay, this is why you're not getting it. And this is what you need to do to get it. So over the course of the year, those 6 direct reports knew I had their backs. They understood marketing, and the people beneath them were happy with what I was bringing to the table. So it took a year and a half. After a year and a half, I could remember having a dinner, and I had a great relationship with all of them. And I can remember smoking cigars and drinking bourbon one night out by a campfire at one of the retreats that I had, and we had the most wonderful time, and it was good. But at the end of the day, you got to be who you are, right? I mean, you can't be somebody else. Matter of fact, in the book, I call that person the imposter. They try
Mm,
to be somebody who they aren't, and that never works out. And those people are always flushed out, and that's where I always really talk highly about. You got to be you, right? And you got to understand the rules of the game. And it like I said, after a year and a half, it was a good run. So the next 8.5 years, it was good. I mean, we had an outstanding team. The returns were excellent, and 7-Eleven ended up buying us. So it was a really good run.
nice. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So you tell me about, was there any turnover underneath you in the office? I understand the stores, the frontline stuff, some of those people come and go.
Yep.
But as far as the, I don't know if you'd call it managerial level, were
Yep.
those over the course of the 8, 9 years that you were in there? Did any of
We
those go
we
away or
uh,
change?
we had turnover, but it was design turnover. So
Okay.
within the operating organization, a lot of those the better performers would get promoted into HR. They would get promoted into marketing. They'd get promoted into these other disciplines. Once again, trying to build their internal resume. So that way, when we had to sit down and do our performance succession planning for vice presidential jobs, that was who got on that list. Who had the best internal resume, and who had the swagger, and who had the confidence. So, there was definite turnover there, but we were always keeping the bucket full, because we had a bench at one point, with 400 district managers. I had a bench of 50 district manager trainees on the bench,
Whoa.
all college graduates. all college graduates, and we would bring them in. We would train them up, put them in temporary assignments, and then as we were moving people on, we put them into good roles. So it was really a lot of credit to our HR group and a lot of credit to our operations group, because the C-store business is all about hiring, disciplining, improving, and hopefully not firing, but there was some of that too.
Fair. Tell me,
Yeah.
let's dig in a little bit into the discipline side, because
Yep.
this is always interesting for me to hear when someone's in a management position, they got people underneath them, they've trained them, they've given them all the tools to succeed, but still some people find a way to not do what they're supposed to do or mess up it. How
Yep.
do you how do you incorporate discipline? Because we always hear about the reward,
Yep.
paying more, PTO, blah blah blah, all that stuff. But tell me about the discipline as far as what you guys ended up doing.
We crafted a program called a PIP program, Performance Improvement Program.
Okay.
So when we identified a person that was struggling, we'd bring them in, we would talk to them, and we would put them on this performance improvement program, which was usually a 90 to 120-day period. And we were very KPI driven, key performance indicators. And we made it very clear to them what success looked like. And over every 30 days, we would review them to see how they're coming along the performance improvement plan. If they are improving, it's all good. If they're not improving, then we had two options. One is to put them into a role that was lesser than the one that they're in, or we would show them the door. I would tell you that the predominance of the people that really couldn't improve to the point where they kept their position, we would reassign people, because we certainly didn't like putting people on the street.
No.
But the best part, or the most interesting part of doing that, is people know when they're over their heads, right? And in that period where they're over their head, they're struggling, they're grumpy, and they just aren't happy because they know, but they're never going to come to you and tell you that. So
it's rare. Yeah.
So I would tell you that I had, over the course of my career, I had more people come to me after they've been reassigned to a lesser position and thank me for it 30 or 60 days after. Because
Wow. Okay.
because they knew it. It was just a matter of coming to work every day and failing and feeling bad about it. So we would put them in a role that we knew could be successful in. Wasn't as big a title as what they were doing, but they were still adding value. And I had, to me, that's probably one of the biggest surprises in business people don't understand. And that is, first of all, you have to have the guts to call it, right? And secondly, when you handle it the right way, you put them on these performance improvement plans, you give them a soft landing, people are going to work for you harder when they go into that soft landing, and then when they were in the role they were struggling. So, you got to have a very defined way to handle that. But when you get to a point, you got to make the call. I had a lot of people say, "Well, this guy needs another 30 days," and I'd say, "No, he had his time. Make the call," because chances are, by giving somebody more time, it ain't going to help after 120 days.
No.
Right?
You're talking 4 months? No.
Yeah,
No,
it ain't
no.
gonna. It is what it is. And they may have been working their butt off during that time, so they felt, let's give them another 30. No, make the call. Make the call. And like I said, when we made the call, we had people that it's rough for the first 30 days because there's embarrassment and failure and all that kind of stuff. But we gave them a soft landing, and it was amazing how many people thanked me for really making that tough call. So that's what I would tell you is, if you have an employee that's struggling, make it clear, make it accountable, give them a performance improvement plan, but at the end of it, take care of them, make the call.
Fair.
Yeah.
I get that. It's interesting how people need to be led, and even sometimes, not often, but every once in a while, that's got to be led to the door.
Right.
A lot of times, just led like, this is what you need to improve. They have to be called out on it. so that
Right.
they're shown that they need to be responsible for themselves.
Right. That's exactly right. That's exactly. And when you live in a world of accountability, which is what the way our operations group was designed, the numbers are there. You know, the numbers are there. You know where you stand. You know how you stand. So it was rare when we actually had to terminate somebody, because people would get to a point where they said, "I need to go somewhere else," and it was the right thing for them to do. And I wrote a lot of recommendations for those people. You know, they came and said, "Hey, look," and I said, "Sure. You know, I applaud you for making a call. How can I help you?"
Yeah,
And it's not a fun thing to do, but that's reality. That's life.
that's when
Corporate.
you're in the
That's the
business with
corporate way.
people.
That's it. That's exactly right.
That's
Yep.
it. We don't have a ton of time left here, Glenn, but I did want to ask you about the time pie chart.
Yes. Yes.
Tell me a story about what the time pie chart is.
Oh man, when you're 20, you may not have a family yet. You got a bunch of friends, so you're working, and you're probably putting a lot of hours in because you're trying to make a name for yourself. So you're working way too much. And when you're not working, you're partying with your friends, playing softball, you're golfing. You may not have a family yet. So that time pie for that 20-year-olds is a predominance of your friends and work. All right. Well, fast forward to when you're 40, right? That time pie, you have a family now, less time with your friends, really less time for work if you're a family man. So that time pie is going to change when you're 40. The percent of your 24 hours in a day working is going to be less than when you're 20. Your friends is going to be less than when you're 20. Your family is going to be a lot more than when you're 20. So my point with the time pie is you have to make decisions. As you're growing with a company, each year your priorities are going to change. Your work priorities are going to change. Your family priorities are going to change. Priorities are going to change. So you have to be able to adapt the number of hours that you have in a day to be able to be successful. And there's one area that I ignored for my career, and that's exercise. I didn't
Oh,
have time, never had time to exercise, never had time to exercise.
so you're
And
eating convenience store food
that's
and
it.
not exercising.
Not exercising, just buying bigger pants. That was my exercise, was buying bigger pants.
I walked to the
So
store to get bigger pants. There you
that's
go.
it. And it's a funny story. My wife, I got married a second time, and my wife she's my soulmate. She's wonderful. When we got married, I wore a size 36 pants, and she said, "I'm never going to let you buy size 38 pants."
Ha!
So we've been married
Smart woman.
20 years. The year before I retired, I go in to buy these pair of golf pants. Put the 36s on, and if I had those buttoned, I'd hurt somebody because it'd pop off and put an eye out. So that at that moment, I said, "It's time. I got to get after it." And now I walk 8 miles a day. I drink nothing but water and coffee, and I watch what I eat. So that from the time pie standpoint, you gotta prioritize that and sleep. You
Fair.
sleep. You know, and I learned that from watching my dogs. Right, they sleep all day long. They sleep when they want. They're never grumpy. You know, sleep and exercise are things that people ignore. It's kind of like priorities. You think you can do everything, but you can't. So,
Mhm.
and that's what the book is meant to be from that standpoint, was to get people's head wrapped around. There's only so many hours in a day. What can I do versus what should I do, and what am I going to do? So that was the essence around the time pie.
Got it. I love it.
Yep.
I love it. I want to ask you, I want to dig into relationships here just a tiny
Okay.
bit before we leave. You're on wife number two. First wife was 20 years. Second wife is 20-ish years. Is that right?
22.
22. That is
Well, no. I'm
two.
sorry. I've been married to her 18 years, but I've known her for 22 years.
All
Yeah.
right. That's a while. That's both
Yep.
of them. That's a long time.
Yep.
So first, well, you have to let me know or correct me, I guess. You're traveling a lot, or we're traveling a lot for work.
Yep.
So did that take a toll on your relationship?
Um, no, No, it didn't, because I was always a dad first,
Okay.
and I was always a husband first. So there was a lot of travel, a lot of that. But I made sure that I was talking to him every day and discussing things. And it comes back to, with my first wife, my mom saw in me because she had some traits that even when I was dating her, I wasn't excited about and thought I could change. You can always think you can change somebody, but
Ooh.
it never works out. So, we had 20 years together, which were 20 good years, and we decided to amicably part. And a year later, I met my second wife, and we dated for 4 years and then got married. And she's wonderful. Now, she's a lot younger than me, which is even better for me.
Yeah,
But
way to
you
go.
know how that goes. Yeah. You know how that goes. But it's you got to prioritize your spouse. Have to.
So did that you're I guess going through a divorce, even if it's amicable, did that affect your
Yep.
work at all, or how do you keep those separate?
You know, no, and that's because I always believe that you have work life and home life. Something has to be good in one of those in order to get through life. And
Oh, love it.
when your work life and your home life are good at the same time, rare, right? So when I was going through the divorce and my personal life and struggling, I actually excelled at work because that had to be my savior. So I never really let that bother me. But
Nice.
what I try to teach my two daughters is it's very rare when your work life and your home life are really good. And when that happens, you got to enjoy it. You got to be where your feet are. But
Yeah, I mean that's the goal,
right,
but yeah,
right, yeah,
challenge.
challenge. Oh yeah, challenge. Mhm.
So does that mean when you got the good relationship that your work suffered just because yin and yang? That's how it works,
Um,
or
when I met my wife, my second wife, um, she saw me for who I was, and she understood what my passions were, and she understood how important work was to me. So, if anything, she was a cheerleader for me to be on the road, for me to, because I talked to her about all these things, and so she was going through the work situations with me. So I still traveled. Uh, Probably the last 10 years, a lot less than the first 20 years, because I got in a role that was a higher level. So I had more board meetings, I had more budget meetings, I had a lot of that stuff. So the travel by definition was less by the time I met her. So, but she was more of a cheerleader for me because she knew what made me tick, and she wanted me to do what made myself happy, along with her. Good
nice.
question. That's a good
That's
question.
I've been married 20, I don't know, where are we at? 22 years.
Come on, you got to know that number.
It's I always mix it up. 22 years. And it's interesting talking to people, and just even as an example, just watching people at my son's baseball game, just watching the different couple, the parents of the kids. We're approaching that age. I guess I'm on the older side of the families that are there. So we have a 10-year-old son. So we're probably older by 5 to 10 years of a lot of the parents there.
Yep.
My wife is one of the coaches, so I'm sitting on the bleachers solo watching some of these families. And it's very interesting just to see how they sit, the body language. And I would dare say, I don't know that there's a lot of love.
Well, you know, you're exactly right. I mean, and that's where my chapter on priorities, right? And I talk about your spouse, and my comment is date night, turn the TV off, put away your phone, and laugh. And
Mm,
those are the qualities that my wife and I live by. To we don't watch a lot of TV. We're always laughing, remembering. We have a big date night once a month. You got to have that connection, because life is so hard. And like I said, that spouse it's so easy for that spouse to be the lowest priority that you have just because they're there. And
Yeah.
I really talk about that in the book because I don't want people to have to go through what I went through. But I think your observation is spot on, right? I mean, like a lot of these people they get home and they get in a room and they're watching TVs for 3 hours and never talking, right? And all of a sudden the kids go away and then they're empty nesters and it's like, who are you, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's what you got to guard against. So
Yeah. My parents got divorced after 29 years, and I'm sure the last 20 out of that 29 were
yep,
probably not exactly honeymoon.
yeah,
Uh, so it's interesting. You watch some of those relationships that are close to me, and then you watch some of the people, just friends, and even people that I know, I don't just superficially, just because they have kids on sports teams or whatever. It's very interesting to stand back and watch. I don't just their position, their relationship with each other. No, it's
right,
really the people say anything like, "Oh my gosh, I can't stand you," or anything, or
right,
anything of that nature. But it's definitely, I don't know. I guess you would say either people are taking their spouse for granted, or maybe they're just grown apart, or they're together for the convenience of the kid, or
right,
they don't even know how to navigate it, or maybe it's a
right,
financial thing. They're like, I don't want to go down
right,
that road. Who
right.
knows? Who knows? But I love talking to people. I mean, this is going to sound rude. I don't mean it to sound rude, I guess, against my spouse. I love talking to people that have been divorced, that have found another spouse that they're like, okay, I made some mistakes with that one, or it didn't work
Yep,
out. Maybe they weren't even necessarily mistakes,
yep.
but they experience, chalk it up to experience, move on. They find the second partner and they're way happier,
Oh, I tell you
way
that
happier.
is, and I've been married to her 18 years, and every day is like the first day, and it's just because uh, we spend time together, we prioritize each other, and a lot of what you said goes into one of the things I wrote in the book, and that is you either let life guide you or you try to guide life,
Mm.
right? And there's a difference there. If you just let life guide you, then you get what you get, versus versus seeing what life's giving you and saying, okay, I need to make a change here in what I'm doing. I need to do this different. I need to do that different. And the results often are better. But people are so happy to complain about things versus do something about it
Oh,
that
so true.
you could sit on the couch and complain, right? I mean, that's easy. And I'm so glad to hear you say that. That that you sit and you look at people, because that I do the same thing. And it's funny, I go to those games now, and people think that my son is my grandson. I get
Oh,
so many, I get so many questions. Is he your grandson? Because he's 17, I'm 65, and I get but I mean it's more funny than it is anything.
yeah.
But it's wonderful,
It's
really is.
interesting because you wonder. I remember sitting in the bleachers, I'm talking with someone, and you realize that their spouse is sitting, I don't know, 30 feet from them.
Right, right. Isn't that funny?
And it's a
That
bizarre, I don't know. I mean, it is. Relationships are a fickle thing,
yes,
and they can be
it's
work, they are work. So I guess relationship of any kind, whether it's spouse, employee, whatever. So
right,
it's very
right.
interesting. Very
It
interesting.
is. It is.
Glenn, I appreciate you being on the show. How can people find you?
Um, I have my email address is author Glenn Plumby at gmail.com.
All right.
Uh, the book's out there on Amazon, A Charm Life. Um, and I'd love to, if somebody feels as though I can add value to their organization, either bringing in new candidates or things like that, I'm certainly open to doing a lot of those things.
Nice.
Uh,
So you do
and
a little bit of consulting.
yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
When I retired, I said I'm not going to retire to get on it to take another job. So I played golf for 2 years, chased my wife and my son and my two daughters for 2 years. In this book, there's starting to be some commitments again. I think that's good. I don't know. I kind of like being retired, but I'm certainly open to do consulting and that kind of stuff. I've turned down a lot of things in the convenience store business because I just really wanted to be retired. But
Fair.
but I really enjoy the business, no question.
No, that is so interesting you say that, because I guess I was just talking to another business owner 2 days ago about retirement and how we have this picture. You're almost kind of fed this story that you work your ass off, you save a bunch of money so that one day you don't have to work. And I have a very hard time even imagining myself not working, not because I need to, but more because it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
I don't
But you know what?
I don't
Let me
mind it.
tell you. Let me tell you something. I don't miss anything about work. I miss the people.
All right.
But what I do is I'm the guy that I have to have things to look forward to. So I'm the guy that's setting up golf outings. I'm the guy that's setting up dinners with friends. And as long as my calendar in the next 90 days looks good, I'm a happy camper.
Oh, I
It's
love
those
it.
people that retire and forget about their calendar that would drive me crazy. But it's really important that you look forward and continue to talk to people, make friends. I learned during the pandemic, I read every week you should text 5 people you haven't heard from during the pandemic.
Oh,
So I started doing that, and I've continued to do that. And
wow.
people are doing it back to me. And it's just that notion of staying connected.
Yeah.
And when you're retired, you have to stay connected. You
I
have
love
to.
it.
Yeah.
I love it. Glenn,
So
that is awesome. I don't know if I've had a show where I have had this much diversity of good advice. I've had
or
shows, I've
BS.
had great guests on the show, phenomenal guests on the show. So you're in good company. And they've all had their focus that they're very good at. Can share
Yeah.
real estate, investing. Insert profession here they do really well at. But Glenn, you are a very well-rounded individual. I love it. That's what I'm aiming for with my kid, to try to get him diversity in skills and experience and knowledge. So I love it.
Well, there it is, a charmed life. So that's actually the picture of, we have a house in Georgia. That's actually the picture off my back porch. So
Well, it
that's
doesn't
my
hurt.
serenity. But, it's 100 pages. It'll take you an hour and a half to read. And it's very concise and to the point. So I really appreciate your time and having me on. And it's been a lot of fun. I've been looking forward to this, and I'm going to start listening to your show a lot more often.
Nice. I appreciate you saying that.
I've told a lot of people about your show. So hopefully your ratings will go up when this is out there. But it's been my pleasure. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're trying to grow, trying to claw our way to the top. That's the game. I'm not retired yet.
Yep.
So
Well, just know when you get to that point, it'll be wonderful.
I'm looking forward to it. That's I don't want to dare say goal.
No goal. No.
That's one of the things that we're pushing for. How's that?
There you go. That sounds right.
So yeah, I can't even imagine stopping doing this podcast. Even if there were no listeners, I gain more education and talking with great guests like you, just more knowledge, more insights, more things that I never even thought of. So I love doing the show. Love it.
Yep. Well, I can tell. And trust me, you'll never have no one listening, because I'll be your biggest fan.
I love it. I appreciate it. Thank you, Glenn.
All right.
This has been Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggle stories and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. My name is James Kademan, and Authentic Business Adventures is brought to you by Calls on Call, offering call answering and receptionist services for service businesses across the country, on the web at callsoncall.com. And of course, the Bold Business Book, a book for the entrepreneur and all of us, available wherever fine books are sold. We'd like to thank you, our wonderful listeners, as well as our guest, Glenn Plumby, operations and marketing expert. This is a crazy awesome list. I love this. Former executive VP and COO of a major convenience store chain, as well as author of A Charmed Life. Glenn, can you tell us through your email address again one more time?
Author. It's spell out the word author. Glenn Plumby @gmail.com.
I love it. And then the book is available.
Amazon. It's out there on Amazon. You can get an e-copy or you can get a hard copy.
Awesome. Love it. Past episodes can be found morning, noon, and night. This link found at drawInCustomers.com. Thank you for listening. We will see you next week. I want you to stay awesome. And if you do nothing else, enjoy your business.